Hey guys, Scary Stories here. Hope you've been well. I got another story I'd like to share with you. And this one's about two couples that go on a little camping trip, but it doesn't quite go how they expect it to. Don't worry, this one doesn't have a ghost in it, and I don't even think it has a monster in it. Unfortunately, this one's a little more based in reality. You never know who you're camping next to when you go out to those little public campsites. Anyways, I won't spoil too much for you. I'll let you listen to it for yourself. And without further ado, let's get into it. I hope you enjoy. About 5 years ago, my wife and I went on a camping trip with two of our closest friends, another married couple. The campsite was just outside of Yosemite and absolutely beautiful. The beauty of it, and to a certain extent the creepiness of it, is that you take a dirt road about an hour and a half off the main road to get to it. It's extremely secluded, serene, and never felt threatening. And it's a really popular campsite, so there's always a few people around, especially in the summer when this occurred. The first day was awesome. I don't remember exactly what we did, but I remember we had a great time. The campsites are fairly close together, but they're usually separated by various shrubs. All I remember is that we all got pretty pumped up about the site we got, as there was no neighbors on one side, just forest, and nobody was occupying the other campsite on the other side of us. This was apparently pretty uncommon, as I was told the campgrounds stay fully booked throughout the summer. Day 2 started normally. We had breakfast, then headed to the lake for a couple hours. We had brought a giant donut floaty with us and lounged around for a little while. When we got back around 2-ish, we noticed that the site next to us now had a silver rental car parked on it. We didn't think too much of it and went on about making our fire to cook with. At some point, we did notice the occupant of the site next to us, a pretty average looking dude, maybe in his early 40s. Honestly, he was so average, it's hard to even picture him now. We all immediately caught on to the fact that he was constantly looking over at us. My friend Dave even made a comment under his breath to me. "You notice that guy keeps looking over here?" I remember feeling a little uncomfortable, as we were all still in bathing suits from the lake, but I made a conscious effort to ignore it. It's worth mentioning that we were a little buzzed, not out of control or anything, just feeling pretty good. Throughout the afternoon and into the evening, we continued to notice the guy constantly looking over at us. In hindsight, Dave or I could have called him out, I guess. This story doesn't really make us look that great, but whatever. I was still stressed from work prior to this trip and really didn't want to let some creepy dude throw off our vibes. The alcohol, coupled with the fact that we honestly kind of felt bad for him, led us to not confront him. Yes, it was very creepy, but I told myself it was just some awkward, lonely dude. Aside from the staring, there were a couple mildly weird incidents that occurred leading up to this very weird one. The first one was that at some point, he left his site to go do something. While he was gone, a girl, who looked to be about our age, walked by and snapped a picture of his license plate. I remember asking her if she needed something, and she smiled awkwardly and just kept walking. Dave and I both thought this was odd, but we were preoccupied with the beer. Later into the evening, around 7-ish, the camp host was doing her rounds checking on people. She checked in on us and then moved on to him. I remember all of us eavesdropping intently, trying to hear what they were saying. And I think we all just really wanted to hear what this creep sounded like. He kept asking questions about the bathhouse. We didn't even know there was one, or even what a bathhouse was for that matter. but he had like 100 different questions about it. Where is it? How late is it open? Is it private? Maybe not that weird, but in context it was definitely kind of odd. The sun started to go down, and we were all drunk by that point, so we weren't really concerned with the creepy guy anymore. At one point we went for a walk and noticed him snooping around what we believed to be the bathhouse. Nowadays I would have called out this behavior. I just want to put that out there, but again, I was drunk and I was 5 years stupider at this time. We all laughed and talked about how creepy he was. Back at the site, we continued to drink and have a good time. And at one point we looked over and we could clearly see the guy in the other camp eating beans out of a can aggressively. He didn't have a fire going, he just was sitting out there with a single lantern going. He looked over at us while he was doing it. He slobbered all over his face, and Dave and I kind of snickered to each other about how weird it was. I don't think the girls noticed. Eventually, we decided to go to bed. I think the guy at the other camp had left his site at this point. I kind of remember us making jokes like, I better not wake up to that dude looking into our window. My wife and I slept in our SUV with the seats folded down. Dave and Sarah slept in the camper shell of their truck. I remember feeling a little creeped out as we fell asleep, but I managed to shrug it off. At around 2:30, both my wife and I were jolted awake by what we thought was a woman's scream. We both looked at each other and asked if the other one had heard that. We came to the conclusion that it was probably people at some other campsite just being loud, still partying late into the night, and decided to go back to sleep. As I was trying to go back to sleep, I started to feel very unsettled. I decided to get out of the car and take a look around. I cracked my door, trying to be as quiet as possible. I'd gotten about one leg out of the car when I heard a faint but direct whispering coming from Dave and Sarah's camper shell about 4 feet away. I froze and then heard it again. Eventually I realized they were trying to tell me something. I whispered back, "What?" And then, very clearly, I heard Dave say, "Start your car." I instantly realized something was wrong. So rather than ask questions, I climbed back into my car. Right away, Dave and Sarah burst out of the back of their camper and frantically jumped into my car. They just told me to drive. They were too freaked out to explain anything, so I drove kind of aimlessly. Eventually, I pulled over, figuring we were far enough away from whatever had freaked them out. Finally, Sarah calmed down enough to tell us what happened. As she put it, she was woken up by a light coming from the creepy dude's campsite. Apparently, he set up the lanterns and flashlights to spotlight himself completely naked, pleasuring himself in the direction of our cars. She also mentioned that he didn't seem like he was able to finish, if you catch my drift. A gross detail, but I feel it's important to the story. It gets weirder. At some point, he turned the lights off, then began using the flashlights to signal across the small ravine that the campsite's backed up to. I'm talking like Morse code or something. Across the ravine, an old RV began using its headlights to flash back. Dave was awake by this point. I questioned them on the details, and they both said it was very clear they were communicating. After that, the creeper turned his light off. And keep in mind, it's absolutely pitch black out there at night. After a few minutes, that's when Dave and Sarah heard a few footsteps around their car, followed by a hard tap on the window. That's what caused Sarah to scream, hence waking me up. At this point, I decided that we definitely needed to call the cops. The only problem was there was zero cell service at the campsite. Furthermore, it was about an hour and a half up the service road from what was already a very remote part of the state, so leaving at night wasn't really an option. we decided that the best course of action was to alert the camp host. We drove around and eventually found the trailer that she lived in. And she was understandably confused to be woken up at 3:30 in the morning, but was responsive. She mentioned that the guy was really weird when she checked in on him earlier and called the police from her satellite phone. And apparently, there was a massive wildfire burning that weekend, and the police said that they wouldn't be able to send anybody out until sunrise. The camp host said that there wasn't really anything she could do beyond calling the cops. It just sucked hearing that. Basically, we were stuck in our car in the pitch blackness, while some crazy dude was out and about. Not to mention whoever that was in the RV that he was signaling to. One more really weird thing happened. At around 4 a.m., we were all sitting in the car when a man in a hood walked right up to the window. The second I noticed him, I turned the engine and headlights on. He ran off into the trees, and we all just sat in my car until sunrise. Once it was light out, we went back to the site to pack our things up. His car was still there, with blankets hung up on all the windows. The whole thing just felt gross, and we wanted to get the hell out of there, so we quickly packed up and left. A couple hours after we left, I got a call from the police. They said they went out to the campsite and questioned the guy. He said he was just simply showering. The cop told me that there was nothing that he could do, really. It was our word against his. He told me he also questioned the people in the RV. They said that they didn't know what we were talking about, but mentioned, and I quote, "A very rude camper screamed in the middle of the night." I don't know. The whole experience with the police was frustrating. I tried to follow up. I even tried getting help from a family member who's a sheriff, but even he said there wasn't really anything that they could do, unless that police chief really wanted to investigate that guy. So that's the story. I learned a lesson about being polite when someone is making you uncomfortable. Nowadays I'm a little bit more aggressive with creepy people. I also know it's easy to hear this story and wonder why Dave or myself didn't just confront this guy, especially when he's literally pleasuring himself at the car that we're sleeping in. I don't know. I wish we could have showed more courage, but honestly it was a really scary moment. I'm okay with admitting that. Now I just think it's kind of funny just how stupid we were and how bizarre the whole situation was. I also feel very fortunate that nobody was hurt. Clearly we were dealing with some kind of messed up individual who had accomplices. I can only imagine what their end goal was and what they would have been capable of doing. It also makes me think that they've probably done stuff like this before. I just really wish the police could have done something. So, what did you think of that one? Not a ghost this time, but maybe it should have been. I haven't been camping enough to have weird experiences with people I don't know, but I can only imagine the feeling of sleeping so close to somebody. Literally, you're living beside someone for a few days and not knowing them at all. Them just kind of eyeing you up and down and generally making you feel uncomfortable. What would you have done if you were sleeping in the middle of the woods in your SUV, waking up in the middle of the night to a scream? I know I've spent a few nights in the SUV in a few Walmart parking lots in my day. Just a few nights while I was traveling. Yeah, I put blankets up on all the windows because I didn't want people peeking in. I just had visions of waking up in the middle of the night and having somebody just staring at me, trying to peek in to see if someone's in the car. It's like, oh, I have a weird phobia of windows and like people looking in. You're walking down the hallway or something, you look out the window and like, whoa, there's just a face there. What if somebody's just like standing out there, staring at the car? I don't know. Freaks me out. I don't like it. But yeah. Anyways, I hope you liked the story. And if you did, feel free to give it a like. If you really liked it, maybe consider subscribing. And if you already did both of those, maybe look over to the right there, and if you see a video of mine on the suggested videos list, give it a little click and watch that one. It really helps out the algorithm, helps get my videos out there for people to see. You don't have to do it, but if you do, I really appreciate it. Anyways, we'll leave it at that for now. I hope you have a great night, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.